Have you ever noticed how the most powerful people in the room aren't the loudest? They don't argue, they don't beg for attention, they simply disappear. And suddenly, everyone leans in. What if I told you that silence is the ultimate power move? Right now, someone in your life is using your kindness against you. They don't love you, they love what you do for them. They don't miss you, they miss the control they had over you. And the moment you stop responding, the moment you stop explaining yourself, that's when they panic. Because here's the truth. When you're always available, you're disposable. When you're always explaining, you're negotiating your worth. When you're always fixing, you're training people to use you. And the worst part, you don't even realize you're doing it. Part 1. The trap of emotional overgiving. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to have a sixth sense for your emotional weak spots? The moment you start pulling away, they ramp up the charm, the guilt trips, the dramatic declarations. It's not coincidence, it's control. Let me break down exactly how this manipulation works. When you've been the reliable one, the listener, the emotional caretaker, people don't just appreciate you, they become dependent on your energy. Your attention becomes their emotional currency, and like any addict, when their supply gets cut off, they don't just walk away quietly. They escalate. The first layer of this trap is what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. Think of it like a slot machine. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but the unpredictability keeps you hooked. That's exactly how toxic relationships function. One day they're showering you with praise, the next they're ignoring you. Your brain stays addicted to those rare moments of validation, making you tolerate behavior you'd never accept otherwise. Here's what they don't want you to realize. Your silence short-circuits this entire system. When you stop reacting to their provocations, their pity plays, their last-minute demands, you're not just withholding words, you're withdrawing the emotional labor that's been subsidizing their bad behavior for years. This is why your withdrawal triggers such extreme reactions. The love bombing, "I've changed," the guilt trips, "after all I've done for you," the smear campaigns, "you've become so cold." These aren't signs you're doing something wrong. They're proof you're doing something right. But here's where most people get stuck. We've been conditioned to believe that if someone is upset, we must have caused it. That if we just explain ourselves better, they'll finally understand. This is the ultimate illusion. The truth, they understand perfectly. They just prefer the version of reality where you're the one scrambling to fix things. Your silence forces them to sit in the discomfort of their own actions. Without your excuses to coddle them, without your justifications to absolve them, they're left alone with the consequences of who they've chosen to be. And for manipulative people, that's intolerable. This is why boundaries feel so brutal. At first, you're not just changing your behavior, you're revoking access to a version of themselves they've gotten comfortable exploiting. The tantrums, the accusations, the sudden amnesia about how they've treated you. That's the sound of their cognitive dissonance crashing down. But here's the life-changing shift. When you stop interpreting their reactions as proof you've done something wrong and start seeing them as proof you've done something necessary, everything changes. Their anger isn't a signal to backtrack, it's confirmation you're on the right path. The temporary discomfort of holding the line is nothing compared to the slow, soul-crushing of perpetual self-betrayal. Every time you choose silence over submission, you're not losing connection, you're reclaiming power. And that's why, in the end, the people who are meant to stay will respect your evolution, while those who benefited from your stagnation will reveal themselves by fighting against it. Part 2. The 3 stages of their panic and why your silence terrifies them. The moment you start pulling away, their behavior follows a predictable pattern. It begins with what experts call love bombing. Suddenly, they're reaching out with the kind of attention you used to crave. Remember that time you were there for me? They'll say, or no one understands me like you do. These aren't genuine expressions of affection, they're calculated attempts to regain control. What's really happening beneath the surface is fascinating. Their brain registers your withdrawal as a genuine threat. Studies show that people with narcissistic traits experience actual withdrawal symptoms when they lose a source of attention. They're not reminiscing about good times. They're conducting emotional reconnaissance, testing which levers still work to pull you back in. The more inconsistent they've been with their attention in the past, the harder they'll love bomb now. This is a well-documented psychological phenomenon called intermittent reinforcement conditioning. When sweet words fail to reel you back in, they escalate to stage 2, the guilt tornado. This is where the emotional blackmail begins in earnest. After everything I've done for you, they'll say, listing favors you never asked for. Or they might try, I guess some people just quit when things get hard, projecting their own behavior onto you. Some go even further with lines like you're just like someone who hurt them, creating false psychological equivalencies. These tactics work because they trigger our most primal fears. University of Michigan research shows that even 2 minutes of guilt induction activates the same brain regions that process physical pain. They're preying on your empathy, reframing their crisis as your responsibility. The entire strategy is designed to make you prove you're not selfish by jumping back into the fray. If guilt trips don't work, they move to stage 3, the reputation emergency. This is when they start recruiting others to do their dirty work. You'll notice mutual friends suddenly asking odd questions like, "Are you okay? I heard you've been acting different." They might post vague social media messages about loyalty or fake people with suspicious timing. Often they'll use third parties to relay how hurt they are, a classic triangulation tactic. Harvard research from 2022 revealed that these smear campaigns follow remarkably consistent patterns. First comes the martyr play, positioning themselves as the victim. Then arrives the concern troll, where others approach you pretending to worry. Finally, they'll often flaunt a new source of attention to provoke jealousy. Your silence feels like violence to them for 3 key reasons. First, it creates cognitive dissonance. Your non-reaction contradicts their deeply held belief that they control you. Second, it causes what psychologists call a narcissistic injury. Their fragile ego can't process being ignored. Third, it creates genuine supply withdrawal. Brain scan studies prove they experience a literal dopamine crash. When deprived of your reactions, there are simple phrases that can disarm these tactics without re-engaging. That's an interesting perspective. Validates without agreeing. I'll think about that delays reaction indefinitely. We remember that differently, refuses to accept false narratives. Around day 21 of no contact, something remarkable happens. Their messages shift from angry to confused. Are you mad at me? They might ask. The flying monkeys stop coming because they've found a new target. You may even experience physical cravings to respond. This is biochemical withdrawal from the drama cycle. This critical juncture is what behavioral psychologists call the extinction burst, their final, most dramatic attempt to restart the cycle. It's the emotional equivalent of a toddler's tantrum, when a stopped behavior no longer gets rewarded. If you can weather this storm without breaking silence, their power over you shatters permanently. The game ends not with a bang, but with the quiet realization that you're no longer playing. Now that you understand their playbook, we can talk about how to maintain your silence without losing your resolve. The real work begins not in managing their reactions, but in rewiring your own. Responses. This is where true freedom is won, not in the heat of battle, but in the quiet moments when you choose yourself again and again. Part 3. The Science of Staying Silent. How to rewire your brain's addiction to their chaos. The most dangerous moment comes after the storm passes, when the texts stop, when the guilt trips fade. That's when your own mind becomes the enemy. You'll lie awake at 2 a.m. wondering if you overreacted. You'll romanticize the good times. You'll convince yourself, maybe this time will be different. This isn't weakness. It's withdrawal. Your nervous system has been chemically dependent on their drama, and what you're feeling is identical to an addict coming off drugs. Neuroscientists have mapped exactly what happens in your brain during this process. Every time you engage with their chaos, your brain released dopamine, that addictive pleasure-reward chemical. But here's the twist. Research from UCLA proves unpredictable, emotional roller coasters create stronger dopamine surges than stable, healthy relationships. Your brain wasn't addicted to them. It was addicted to the biochemical spikes created by their hot and cold behavior. The first critical window is the 72-hour rule. When the urge to reach out feels overwhelming, delay for exactly 3 days. Write that angry letter, draft that emotional text, then put it away. When you revisit it after 72 hours, 2 things become clear. The intensity has evaporated, and their manipulation tactics jump off the page. This cooling off period allows your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, to regain control from your emotional limbic system. Prepare what therapists call a relapse prevention kit for weak moments. Record a voice memo from your future self saying, "Remember how shattered you felt last time?" Save screenshots of their cruelest messages. Keep a dated list of every time they dismissed your feelings. When nostalgia hits, review this evidence. Behavioral studies show concrete reminders are 300% more effective than willpower alone at breaking trauma bonds. Here's a counterintuitive trick. Tell one trusted person, if I'm about to contact them, physically stop me. Just knowing someone's watching reduces relapse rates by 60%. This is called the body double method. Your accountability partner becomes an externalized version of your better judgment. Months or even years later, you might suddenly hear from them. A nostalgic message, an accidental call. This isn't about missing you. It's what psychologists term hoovering, like the vacuum brand, because they're trying to suck you back in. Usually, it means their new source of attention dried up. Brain scan studies reveal these individuals experience actual withdrawal when they lose narcissistic supply. They're not reaching out because they changed. They're reaching out because they're desperate. The final test comes in what behavioral scientists call the extinction burst. Around the 21-day mark of no contact, they'll often make one last dramatic attempt to reel you back in. This might be an extreme gesture, showing up unannounced, a suicidal threat, or a grand romantic overture. It's not real. It's their psyche's last-ditch effort to restart the addiction cycle. Survive this, and something remarkable happens. The spell breaks. Silence becomes your superpower when you realize it's not about ignoring them. It's about finally listening to yourself. Every unanswered message rewires your neural pathways. Every resisted urge strengthens your emotional immune system. And one day, you'll realize the cravings have stopped. You're free not because they changed, but because you did. Now comes the most important question. What will you do with all this reclaimed mental real estate? The energy you once spent obsessing over their mixed signals can now fuel your actual life. That's the ultimate revenge. Not hatred, but indifference. Not blocking their number, but forgetting they exist. The day you stop counting days of no contact is the day you've truly won. Part 4, the final transformation. When silence becomes your sanctuary, there comes a morning when you wake up and don't check your phone for their messages. A week passes where you forget to count the days of no contact. Then comes the miraculous moment when someone mentions their name and you feel nothing. No adrenaline spike, no sinking dread. Just mild curiosity, like hearing about a stranger from your distant past. This isn't suppression, it's genuine liberation. Psychologists call this phenomenon emotional decoupling. Your nervous system has finally stopped associating them with danger or reward. Brain scans of people who've achieved this show remarkable. Changes the amygdala, your fear center, no longer lights up at reminders of the person, while the prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought, shows increased activity. Essentially, your brain has physically rewired itself to recognize that this person holds no power over your well-being. The most surprising part? You'll start noticing their behavior patterns everywhere. That coworker who alternates between effusive praise and cold shoulders. The friend who only reaches out when they need something. The date who tests you with subtle put-downs. What once felt normal now stands out in sharp relief, like spotting the same brand of poison in different bottles. This isn't paranoia. It's what trauma experts call post-traumatic wisdom. Your body has developed a kind of emotional radar that vibrates when it detects familiar toxicity. Here's where most people stumble. They mistake this clarity for bitterness. Why am I so cynical now? You might wonder. But this isn't cynicism, it's discernment. The same way a chef can taste when food is oversalted or a musician cringes at an off-key note, you've developed an expert palate for emotional manipulation. The tragedy isn't that you see these patterns everywhere, it's that they are everywhere, and most people remain oblivious. A curious thing happens around the 6-month mark of sustained silence. People who once took sides against you start quietly reappearing. You were right about them, they'll confess. Others will share stories that confirm everything you suspected but could never prove. This isn't coincidence, it's the universe's way of validating your journey. Manipulative people always overplay their hand eventually. Your silence didn't just protect you, it allowed them enough rope to reveal their true nature to everyone. The final test comes when life throws genuine hardship your way. A job loss, an illness, a family crisis. In your weakest moment, the old conditioning might whisper, they would comfort you. But here's the truth very few acknowledge. Toxic people don't show up for real pain. They only appear for performative suffering they can use to look like heroes. Your deepest wounds were never safe with them. They were potential weapons waiting to be turned against you. Real healing begins when you stop comparing their highlight reel to your behind the scenes. When you understand that what you miss was never their love, but the fantasy of what you hoped they could be. The person who lives rent-free in your mind isn't them. It's the ghost of potential they pretended to embody. One day, you'll catch yourself speaking about them in past tense without realizing when the shift happened. You'll stumble across an old photo and feel neither anger nor longing, just faint amusement at how someone who once dominated your thoughts now feels as significant as a childhood playground rival. This is how you'll know the transformation is complete, not when you hate them, but when you barely think of them at all. The greatest power of silence isn't in how it changes them, it's in how it changes you. Every unanswered provocation strengthens your resolve. Every unspoken defense deepens your self-trust. And when you finally stop waiting for closure from them, you discover the shocking truth. The closure was inside you all along, waiting to be claimed. Now you stand at the threshold of your new life, not hardened, but wise, not closed off, but selective. No longer the person who accepts breadcrumbs because you once starved. The silence that began as protection has become your foundation. And from this solid ground, you'll build something they can never touch. A life so full, their absence becomes your greatest blessing.